All right. Welcome everyone back for another episode of Building the Empire. I'm Sam Odutola, former Georgia State student, co-founder and president of the Commercial Real Estate Group. And we are graced today to have Mr. Keith Mack in the building. Keith, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, brothers?
All right. So for those of you who may not know, Keith is one of the most distinguished professionals in the Atlanta real estate community. He is currently the managing principal of Gibraltar Capital Partners, a founder of the Circle of Trust, one of the truest and most genuine networking groups, which calling it a networking group almost does it a bit of a disservice. It's a great group of people in the Atlanta community that I myself am getting re-ingratiated with. And he has over 30 years of development experience across all asset classes, collaborating with some of the most influential developers, such as Region Partners and previously CIM Group. So, Keith, does that just about cover it? Is there anything I missed?
No. You gave me my flowers while I was still alive, so I'm certainly appreciative of that.
We have to.
But it's great to be here, man. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm wearing my red. You're not wearing your red, but that's okay. It's all good.
I'll have to do better next time. We'll save it for the next episode next year. Now we have one thing going.
Yeah, man.
Great, awesome. So I was thinking maybe we jump into a few questions and then probably just see where the conversation goes from that.
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Shoot.
All right. So first area I was thinking we could cover is maybe, taking it all the way back to childhood, right? So how was it for you growing up in the Mack household? Did you have any siblings, any significant influences as you were growing up?
And it was great. I was born in the Bronx, Boogie Down Bronx, in 1971. I actually have a twin brother and a little sister. She's 13 years younger than me. So really growing up with a twin was interesting, kind of in the 70s. I had both parents in the house. They're both teachers. They gave us kind of instilled the kind of the work ethic, the emphasis on education early. It's funny that, my brother is 5 minutes older than me. And when we were growing up, we kind of were thick as thieves. But as we kind of matriculated through high school and all that, we really didn't talk too much, but we were in the same house, right? We were trying to kind of get our own identity. I think he was a little bit better at dating than I was. I was probably a little jealous, but it was a fun experience. I moved to Long Island in third grade, and I was in a town called Westbury, Long Island, and kind of went through elementary school, junior high, which is in New York. You had a junior high, you didn't have a middle, and then high school. Graduated from high school in '88, and then went to University of Virginia undergrad and got my architecture degree. And I realized probably somewhere in my junior year, that I didn't necessarily want to practice architecture. I was more of an engineering mind, I think. I found out how much the architects made, which was like 18 grand. And I was like, a year, an entire 18 grand. So that wasn't cool. No bueno there. So then I decided to jump into into construction. But before I did that, I did what they call architecture technology. So I ended up getting my bachelor's of science in architecture anyway. But instead of doing the studio, as a lot of architecture students do, I was doing like CAD and clash detection and all of that. So the funny thing is when I left and went to University of Florida for grad school, I was working, that you can take your design work and create these 3D shapes. And then there's an estimating program called Timberline where you can kind of take those shapes and estimate how much it would cost to build this wall or build this floor or what have you. And that was the initial BIM, right? That's what you hear if you hear the term BIM. I created BIM. I didn't know what I had. And so I could have had a Ferrari in the house on the on the coast, and I didn't. But that was cool. Got my graduate degree in construction. Had an interview in Atlanta with Holder Construction that happened to be on the first day of Freaknik in '94.
Wow.
I said, man, I don't know what this is, but I'm moving to Atlanta. And I moved to Atlanta and never left.
Fair enough. My next question was actually going to be in that direction of how from New York down to Atlanta, but not a bad reason, because especially in the heyday.
Yeah. I'm still loyal to the soil, though. I'm still repping New York. Still repping New York.
Have to. Well, I know you mentioned like a little bit about between at least you and your twin brother, how that identity piece started to come into play when you were younger. And I guess, as I was listening, I started to pair it together with what that process looked like specifically for you, coming out of undergrad from architecture and, kind of drifting towards the commercial side of things. As you were finding that identity for yourself, first as a student, and then, more and more as an adult, young adult, professional, etc. What was that process like for you? Was that around the time that you started to define what your process for pursuing whatever pursuit it is that you were going after? Or did that kind of come a little bit later? How did your process start to develop around that age?
In terms of just like thought process, problem solving, really all of that? Well,
Yeah.
So it's interesting because, when you're an architecture student, you have to you get a problem that you have to solve for. And then you basically have nothing, right? So you have to come up with a partie or a vision, and you go through your thought process in terms of design and layout and all of that stuff. And ultimately you have to create something that matriculates your vision, right? And, in architecture school, there's an output that you have to provide, whether it be drawings or a model or both. And you have a prescribed amount of time to do that. So early on, you have to figure out time management and, where to focus your energy and where maybe to kind of lay back and not focus as much energy, because you can't do it all in the time frame that you have. So I'm a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, A5. So, we have step shows and we have other stuff that we're doing kind of outside of architecture. So you had to kind of figure out how to juggle all your extracurricular activities with your schoolwork early. So that's kind of where it started.
Okay. And were there any like childhood traits that others noticed about you that you saw come to play as you started to, identify that process for yourself, like that you could see in yourself that others maybe saw too at a much younger age?
I would say like my mother really saw. I was big into model building, whether it be the erector sets or things like that. And she saw that I was had that mind where, I wanted to be a part of the built environment. And I think one of the first influences I had was the Brady Bunch, and the Mike Brady was an architect. And so
I did not know that.
That was kind of the first thing. And then there was a black professor at Jericho High School, where I went to high school, and his name is Mr. Bryant, and he was the mechanical drawing teacher. And so we kind of learned draftsmanship and things like that. And so he was the first black person I saw kind of in that field. And that kind of helped, because you saw somebody that looked like me that was kind of in that field as well. So that kind of helped me to kind of pursue architecture as a profession.
I see. And I think, at least for myself, right, I found it pretty helpful to seek out different influences, right? Even if I had a general idea of what it was that I wanted to at least try doing as I was getting older and older. But, part of the basis for my question on childhood was that even, even at least one decade later, I'm noticing like, wow, I'm still kind of that same kid. I don't know that anyone ever really loses that as they grow into their career. And it sounds like, more or less that was kind of true for you.
Yeah. I kind of stayed in the built environment really throughout, and even to this day. And I'm still curious about, how things get put together. I think then we'll talk a little bit more about the networking and all that stuff, but I was always kind of more of an extrovert in terms of just connecting with folks and all of that. I used to play baseball, and my coach told me that I had the worst arm that he had ever seen in his life. So that was the end of that. So I figured I better study.
Yeah, take it from there. All right. So I guess baseball starts to fade away. And I guess, you got to start thinking about the bigger world that's out there. My mom used to call it. There was two things that she would always instill in myself. I have two younger sisters, so the three of us got the same lesson every single week, right? Number one, it's a cold world, which it is. And two, you have to be sharp, right? Whatever it is that you're practicing, from being a florist to being a developer, right? You have to be sharp. So we kind of touched on it when we were talking about the development and just general happening of your process, but zooming out and looking at, the state of the United States today, and of course the history that we cannot ignore, especially not this month. what was your coming into, rather than to, but coming into America moment, right? When did it start to click for you when you realized like, okay, this is no longer the sandbox. Like we actually have to approach things strategically from a disciplined state of mind and, just that general sort of thinking and realization. Do you remember a distinct, I don't know, chapter or era when that started to click?
Well, I would say, growing up, at least early, in the Bronx, we didn't really face racism at all. But when I got to third grade, that's when I first heard the N-word, right? Third grade,
Right.
I was called that. And I mean, I didn't really know what it was. And matter of fact, the guy spelled it wrong, but, and I'm glad that I didn't come back and tell my mother that I was called that, because then it would have been a completely different situation. But then it just, you realize that I was different, right? I went to a school that basically had, we had a graduating class of 210 people and we had 4 Black people in it. And one of them was my twin brother. So, we didn't really have a whole lot of diversity, and you realize then that you're different, right? And so my dad and my mom were really staunch defenders of the culture. We learned, she made us watch Alice and the Prize and taught us the tenets of Kwanzaa and all of that stuff. And my dad was really, I guess he really emphasized just respect, making sure that you carry yourself accordingly, make sure that you don't have other people make their decision for you.
Right.
I staunchly remember, as in high school, we're going out clubbing or whatever, and I had like a 40, I think it might have been a 32 times. We don't have 40s in New York, but it was, and my dad was asking me what I was doing with this thing, because I was just going to bring it and just drink it, while, we were going wherever. And he said, don't have people make the decision for you. So put that beer down. And when you leave the house, you carry yourself with respect and honor and all of that. So that was kind of something that I kind of took away. And then kind of getting into, professional life, you start kind of figuring out, particularly in a industry like real estate, that there's not a ton of diversity, and we're trying a whole lot of different ways to kind of increase that and change that. But you just have to make sure that if you can kind of keep those tenets of carrying yourself with respect and honor and just keeping your head up and staying as sharp, keeping all the arrows in your quiver as sharp as possible, then I think you'll be okay in the long run.
I agree with that. I mean, honestly, it's very ironic, the simplicity that just certain advice actually has in pretty much a lot of, I won't say anyone, but in many, many lives, be it in the US, be it in Asia, be it in any other corner of the world, there are these universal principles that will, when I say take you far, it's not necessarily only in a tangible sense, but like as a human, holistically, right? You hold on to those things, you more often than not are going to land pretty close to the person you want to be.
Using all these big words on a Friday, brother.
Yeah,
but I like it. I like it.
I got coffee going. We have a few more.
I like it, big dog. I like it.
We tried to. But yeah, so another thing that I heard as I was listening to you was the sort of perspective that comes from having early adversity, right? And I don't know if you in, today's time, Keith Mack of 2025 wouldn't necessarily consider it adversity anymore, but I'm sure, or I would believe that at one point it was something that stuck out in your early life, right? The perspective that comes from facing those sorts of difficult challenges, in my experience at least, many, many years removed, has helped me to actually be more open to as wide a variety of people as I possibly can, right? Because when you feel something like that at an early age, it stays with you, right? You don't really forget it. So connecting that early experience to, the circle of trust, right? I'm pretty excited to get into that, especially since I kind of left the city of Atlanta to go out to Chicago for a few years right before I could, really start putting my foot in there. How would you say your early experience and having to go through certain, challenging experiences and whatnot has helped you to have the mindset and the desire to grow the circle of trust in the city of Atlanta today?
Well, I think, one of the things that I've kind of taken on at an early age and kind of carried on is really just, connecting with folks and really understanding the people's story, right? What I always tell people is, if you take the time to listen if you lead with yourself then you're kind of shutting out a lot of the story that you can kind of get from other people. So I think that it's important for you to kind of listen first and then talk about yourself second, because everybody has something to offer, and you can kind of figure out how much they have to offer and how much they don't. But if you let the conversation kind of lead the way, you'll end up with resources that you didn't have before. You'll end up with friends that you maybe didn't have before, and you certainly may end up with information that you didn't know before. So, in doing that, I kind of became like a connector. So I would reach out if I was talking to somebody that, maybe had a design challenge that they were trying to overcome. And I could remember that, hey, I just talked to a designer last week, so maybe I can put the two of them together. Maybe it can resolve their issue, maybe it can't, but at least you can kind of make that connection. So, over the years, I kind of started doing that. And what I noticed with respect to the circle is when I started, I got my MBA at Georgia State. Go Panthers.
Go Panthers.
And, came out and started working with Smith Real Estate, who is a minority business, but we were working with Carter. And actually, I worked with JLL first, and then I worked with Smith Real Estate / Carter. And then I left Carter, went to Red Rock Global. If you guys know Mike Tabb, hopefully he'll make the series too. So I spent 2 years on the Rock at Red Rock Global, and then went to Regent, and kind of '04, when I moved to Regent, or really '06, I was able to start going to networking events, and you had like AREP, AYREP, and you had NAOP and Cornet and ULI, and a lot of them,
right,
you didn't really have any diversity, right? So I always said it was stale, pale, and male. You didn't have any women, you didn't have any people of color. It was just old white dudes, right? So when I started at Regent, I started on the Sovereign Building, and so in any given day, I would talk to the banker, the broker, the marketing person, the contractor, the property manager, the project manager, the engineer. So I said, what I wanted to do is create a group that was diverse and represented all of the spokes in the wheel of the development cycle. So you end up with kind of all of the diverse skill sets represented, which helps to increase diversity at the events and increase the conversation. A lot of times if you go to like a brokerage event, everybody, theoretically, you're just trying to network with your competition, which is a little bit harder. In this particular case, you're kind of networking with everybody. So that's kind of how the circle started. In 2006, it was the circle. It was nothing. It was just called Happy Hour. In 2010, end of 9, beginning of 10, I was watching the movie Meet the Parents. And they had the Circle of Trust and Meet the Parents. Meet the Parents, right? And so I said, that's a cool name, Circle of Trust. And so I started calling it Circle of Trust. And we started with 4 people at the corner of a bar. I think it was the old Lucky Lounge down on Lucky Street. And then it might even be the place before was Lucky Lounge. And then it just grew. We had what we called the Fighting 15. So we had the same 15 people that came every month. Then we had the Fierce 30, and 30 became 60. And then social media started to kind of kick on back in call it 11-ish, 12-ish. And so 60 became 100. And so now it's just kind of grown over the years. So we have, now we have 5,000, 6,000 members. And
it's incredible.
And we have a really good time every time out.
The perfect storm. But I mean, I feel like stars can align for any organization, group, intention, mission, whatever it is. But I think without that sort of, genuine desire for something to actually be made of quality rather than, a picture or a video or a post or anything like that, it's usually not going to last. Or even worse, those that are observing it from the outside looking in, considering doing it or becoming a part of it, are going to notice that it's a bit dry. It's a little bit hollow, right? Even from halfway across the country. A friend, a classmate and maybe mentee or young brother of yours, adopted, maybe not by blood, he would send me pictures and send me videos of these different events. And I'm like, I got to get back. I got to get back down there. So
yeah. Thanks for that, man. I always say that the circle is the biggest family in Atlanta. And the one thing that I pride myself on with the circle is consistency, right? So you could have gone to a circle 3 years ago, 5 years ago, left, gone to Chicago, come back, and then you come back, and the faces may be different. There may be some faces that you will recognize, but the experience is consistent. So, that you have a really good vibe. I think people are really welcoming. The only reason I have name tags is because you kind of need to have name tags in an event like this, but it's
Right.
I don't want, there's every now and then you'll get somebody that's got the business cards and they're just giving their card out and they're just trying to lead with the business card and they rarely come back because it's not that type of community. It's the community is more inclusive than that. And we're the most diverse networking group out there. So if you go, you'll see everybody and by far. And that's really what I take pride in. And so, we just had an event in January. We have our 15th annual 19th hole classic golf tournament in April. I certainly wish you guys to come out and come out, and people that are within the sound of my voice, you want to sponsor, hit me up. But we benefit Prostate Cancer Foundation. And so this is the 15th year doing it at Woodmont Golf Club. We've given, call it 175,000 to prostate cancer over the years. And, hopefully we can get another big check out to them and keep doing the work, particularly, with prostate cancer and Black men in particular.
Absolutely.
Black men are 6 times more likely to die from prostate cancer than white men. So in terms of just awareness and making sure that brothers, particularly, I mean, they're all my brothers, but I'm talking about brothers.
Absolutely.
Aware of the blood work and the attention to the body that you need to do and all that kind of stuff. So you stay with us longer because if you let cancer get in the kitchen and start cooking, then it's too late. But if you catch it early and prostate cancer is 98% treatable. So you want to kind of get ahead of it.
Yeah, absolutely, Keith. Thank you for the background and all of the insight. I mean, beyond whatever anyone probably listening right now might have been able to find, at least strictly online. Excuse me. I think it's very helpful. So one point, kind of keeping theme with the general line that we've been on right now, that I want to kind of bridge into more of what you have been doing, over the last 10, call it maybe 15 years. Are
you calling me old?
I'm not calling you old. We're both young. I know you. I'm going to see you out there on the Peachtree Road race. Not yet. Young mind, right? But trust, right? How has that developed for you both personally and professionally over, call it the last decade? Not just in a general, pie in the sky sort of sense, but you're building of it and its significance to you as you build both more meaningful and significant personal and professional relationships.
Yeah, well, I'd say, early on, I think I was kind of like a Labrador retriever, right? You love everybody, you trust everybody. And I think, as you start matriculating through, business and kind of more, into adulthood, you realize that people have ulterior motives. And a lot of times evil doesn't, raise its head until you see it clearly, right? So, you just have to understand that everybody's not there to be a shepherd of your care. Right. And so it's almost like I had a friend of mine that was talking about hiring, and it's like, you hire slow and fire quickly. You kind of want to take the time, and that's kind of part of the conversation, right? If you let the conversation kind of lead the way, you can kind of build a relationship through conversation, and you can kind of understand who's real and who's not. Who's a giver, who's a taker by conversation. If you kind of jump into an arrangement or an agreement without having that conversation first, then you leave yourself open to kind of get hurt down the road. So I think that now I'm trying to be more deliberate in, my relationships and my connections. And instead of just having Instagram where you can get 20,000 followers for $1, you actually make the effort to understand who the people are before you really make a connection with them.
Got it. And it makes sense, right? I think it's not too much that anyone can do, at least if they're trying to do whatever their objective is seriously without, that sort of understanding and transparency with the people that they're working with in place. So that makes total sense. So I want to pivot back to you personally a little bit before maybe we hop into Gibraltar and speaking about all of the things that you're trying to do both better and differently at this moment in time. earlier on, we were kind of talking about your earlier life and career towards the start of our conversation. But what would you say were or was, maybe it's, multiple or just one profound one, but your most significant mistakes or learning moments that really almost changed the neuroplasticity in your head for the better?
Neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity changed the way you think about yourself
Yeah,
and
no.
interacting.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think early on when I was with Jones Lang LaSalle, we were doing but basically it was a signage rebranding program where you took all of the cellular companies and there was a group called
Hmm.
Singular Wireless.
I remember.
And,
Not that old. Right?
yeah, right, right, not that old. But we were having some issues with some of our consultants, and what I was trying to fix it myself, right?
Mhm.
And I wasn't really as forthcoming to the client as possible, because I was trying to fix it first. And
Right.
it got to the point where they were unhappy, and I actually got removed from the project, because he thought I was withholding information, and
Mhm.
almost into a nefarious, point of view. And it's what I learned there is, one, to communicate better, and
Right.
two, to share and use my resources more effectively. Right. So I always say I'm not, maybe back in the day I was more like Iverson. I was all shoot, no pass. But now I have to pass the ball. Right.
Right.
You have the resources, and you have the smart people on your team for a reason. So being able to use them as resources, delegate responsibilities, and communicate effectively. I think that was the biggest takeaway that I learned from that. That was back in 4, and kind of carried that on. As that was actually back in 01. So
I
I
see.
carried that on for 20 plus years.
Yeah. Interesting how, you almost have to get rocked a little bit in whatever sense that is for whoever you are, whoever is listening, in order for you to, what do people say? Yeah, you got to get broken down before you can get built back up. But I feel like when it is something that is a grave mistake, both to you personally and professionally, it sticks with you and it just forces your mind to open up, because at this point, it can't possibly be getting done right if something of this stature is happening, whether the person accusing or calling out is right or wrong. Right, when you notice something this significant happening, I think it's probably, if you truly are a lifelong learner, which has been very clear to me you are, your mind opens up, and it opens up for the better, ropes more of others in first, kind of how you said at the very start, and yourself second, not in a hierarchical way, but just for the betterment, right? Listening before really doing anything else usually leads you to a better place.
Yeah. Like brother Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even Mike did. We saw that recently.
Yeah, we saw Mike get punched in the mouth. That fight was terrible, by the way.
He knows it was going to be terrible. I think he knew that. He knew that. He knew that going in. I have no doubt about it. He's on a beach somewhere, I'm sure, having a good time.
Spending that money.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So Gibraltar Capital Partners, Keith, I don't want to ask too much just yet. Kind of want to, hear the nexus of that idea, now the company, and maybe even calling it a company is a bit of a disservice, but, considering what you were working on up until launching the firm with CIM on Centennial Yards, right? Why now? How did that sort of idea and desire to not only think of it, but jump at this moment in time and at this moment in the, timeline of Centennial Yards development? How did that come about, and what gave you the conviction that, made sense more so than any other time in the past?
Yeah. So I've been fortunate to work on some really cool stuff,
Yeah.
from the Sovereign building. I mean, even before that, I did the helipad at Grady Hospital. And then I did Sovereign, and I was able to do Thompson Buckhead and Thompson Savannah and the hotel in Charleston, and in some of the early projects at Centennial Yards. And Centennial Yards is a fantastic project. I've always said that I think it's the most prolific project in North America. It's huge. So it sucks the air out of the room. It's huge. It's the biggest project going, right?
Mhm.
So, I kind of was thinking, and everybody, I think, in real estate has an entrepreneurial spirit somewhere. So I started thinking about kind of where I wanted to take my career, what I wanted to do in my life, and kind of where I was kind of in terms of my age, right? So I'm 54.
Mhm.
And I said, well, if I'm gonna look at trying to do my own thing and do projects that I think can truly benefit lives, impact lives, and feed my soul, then I probably needed to kind of step back and kind of look at a different way to kind of approach it, right? And
Right.
so, even if, by making that decision, the scale of the project goes way down, you end up, I think, it benefiting more folks with smaller projects in different ways, shapes, and forms, right? So, I said, if I'm going to make a run, particularly, given where things were in the market, I think that you were kind of at the bottom and irrespective of who won the election, I think that real estate was kind of poised for an uptick. So I said, if I can come in at the bottom and kind of take advantage of the increase in the market when, rates eventually drop and you start to see more opportunities for transactions and things of that nature for increased development, if you can kind of take advantage of that early and utilize the network that I have, with whether with its connections on LinkedIn or through the circle of trust, the people that I've kind of met, over the course of the careers, with the Red Rock and Regent and CIM and
Right.
all of that,
Right.
then I think that I can be really impactful, as a developer that's still somewhat young in the business. And I think that, having the experience of having done Sovereign and having done the Thompsons, I just have that street cred, if you will, that people can see the buildings and walk in the buildings and kind of understand what that work product is.
Right.
And so then when you start looking at collaboration partners and looking for financial capital partners, then it's an easier sell because of the track record. And I think that the momentum and the feedback that I've received from people regarding the new firm has been somewhat overwhelming at times. And I think that's because of the experience that I've had through the way.
Definitely. I mean, it's an embodiment of you, it sounds like to me, and not just, from your own mind, but, from those that are deciding like, okay, keeps doing this. It's almost like people are saying, finally, let's see it. Let's get to work.
Said that. It said, man, I've been waiting 10 years for this. And Centennial Yards, I mean, there's still, I think, the opportunity to kind of come back in and it's a long build out. So, there may be an opportunity to kind of come in on some of the subsequent phases as a co-developer. And work on some stuff kind of on the back end, because, there's still a minority goal that needs to be achieved. And I'm certified MBE with the city. So I have that opportunity to kind of do that. And so, I've been, talking to, the South Downtown folks and some of the other folks just to kind of see if there's an opportunity to collaborate and help to really improve the downtown business district. Because I think that, all cities deserve a great downtown, and Atlanta's no different. And there's some really cool stuff that the Russells are doing and South Downtown's doing,
Absolutely.
and CIM is doing, and Georgia State is doing that I think will help downtown get its groove back, so to speak. And so to the extent that I can be a part of it now as kind of the entrepreneurial, spirit and founder of GCP, I think it just helps. And it really just invigorates me every day to wake up and understand that there's a ton of potential out there. And if I can kind of, tap into just, a small percentage of that potential, then I'll be well. The only other thing I need to have is the Jets to win the Super Bowl, but I might be dead before that happens.
We will see. Mega Millions winners are popping up left and right, so luck is in the air. We'll see. We'll see.
But, I love hotels. So I'm kind of like, even though I kind of have expertise in hotels and office and condos and apartments, hotels are the product type that I like the best. So I'm trying to kind of pigeon or emphasize that particular skill set as a hotel developer, as a hotel subject matter expert, because one, I like the product type. Two, there's not a lot of Black hotel developers out there.
Absolutely.
And I think that when you start thinking about kind of that product type in the market and kind of where opportunities lie, I think that there's probably more opportunities in hotel hospitality than anywhere else right now.
Right. And it kind of, it speaks and it fits with this idea, this philosophy of connection that's really been with you since, forever ago. Everyone listening now, I'm sure understands, not just today, but I can kind of see a parallel as I'm about to ask this question. But, in your own mind and in your own words, what would you say nourishes you these days? We've touched on like fragments of things in that direction, but both, with how you get up and spend your days today, be it professionally, be it personally, be it spiritually, whichever direction you want to take it, where do you find that nourishment, maybe in the, second order sort of thinking beyond the surface?
I would say I'm a big fan of, uh, relationships and communication and conversation, right? I think that, going into, every given day and, I wake up and I hit the Peloton. ATL Black Ninja is my Peloton name. If anybody wants to race me, go ahead and race me. But, I am, I do that and I kind of come in and I figure out what am I going to learn today? What am I going to, improve upon today? And so I'm able to kind of just start that way. And then during the course of the day, I can kind of go through whatever process I need to go through to solve whatever issue comes up in that particular moment. But it starts with that. It starts with, like you had mentioned before, always kind of in that learning mode and always trying to figure out how best to make myself a better person.
Mm-hmm.
And like we're all works in progress. And we all have, made mistakes and it's the learning from those mistakes that makes us better.
Mm-hmm.
It's the getting up after the knockout punch that
Right.
proves your resiliency. So
Right.
that's kind of what the fire, I guess, that burns.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for that. And I mean, one point that kind of stood out to me was, getting back up after you have been knocked down in whatever sense that may be in anyone's life. Would you say that you've had to develop more of an ability to rebound from that? I mean, we naturally all do, but how is your foundation in that department grown over time? Because I mean, for a lot of young people listening, I'd imagine a lot are going to be students or pretty early into their career, or maybe more established, whatever it might be. That is something that is inescapable, right? And it either shapes you or it'll break you down, and you at that point decide whether or not you want to get built back up. So how is that resiliency kind of grown for you over time, and has there been anything that's helped make it stronger for you?
No, I mean, I think that experience helps resiliency. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're kind of been around long enough and you've worked on particularly successful projects, so you've executed a project like a Sovereign or a project like Thompson Buckhead, then you know that you can do it, right? So
Right.
if there is a hiccup or some adversity that you have to overcome, you can kind of go back to those successes to kind of help pull you through. I also say that, real estate is kind of fraught with risk, in some cases, but it's not the bomb squad, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not, if you have a bad day, you're still walking out with your fingers and toes. And so
Right.
I think
Right.
sometimes you just need to slow it down, because a lot of people, particularly young people, want to go at things with incredible speed and pace. And if you slow it down, then you can kind of see a lot of the chinks in the armor, so to speak. And there may be a path forward that becomes obvious if you stop to survey the whole landscape. And so
Right.
I try to tell young folks that I mentor to you take that into account. Just, you don't have to do it all today. Just take your time, slow it down, and kind of look at the whole landscape before you act. A lot of folks, I always tell, there's a young guy that I work with at Centenary Yards that he has he would just fire out an email, fire it off like a hand grenade, just, and throw it. Right. And I said, but dude, I mean, just relax before you react and just throw this hand grenade into the room. Understand kind of who's in the room and what do you want to have outcome? What outcome do you want to achieve from that email? Right. So you need to kind of think things through. Don't just get it so it's off your bot and you can
Right.
check it. Just because at the end of the day, you may create another set of problems by sending this email, thinking that you're now it's a hot potato and it's kind of off of my radar. So I mean, it's all about just understanding, go through a process. Sometimes the process has to be a little bit expedited because it's a hot situation, but
Mm-hmm.
take the time to kind of survey the moment before you act.
Got it. Do you have like more of a call to action? That certainly was, but kind of continuing in that same vein, would you say that you have specific calls to action for the younger generation that's in this industry today, but just generally speaking, right? Like, how are you seeing things today compared to what society and just professional culture look like when you were first getting started? What would you say to those that are getting into their careers now and really wanting to make a mark? but perhaps not taking the right or most effective sort of action?
Well, I think there's actually more vigor with the younger folks today than I saw. I think that there's more programs in place for, mentorship than we had. And I know growing up,
Definitely.
I didn't really have a lot of Georgia State. There was no Georgia State real estate group. There was no ULI mentor mentee program.
Hmm.
There was no NAIOP mentor program. We didn't
Right.
really have any of that. But now you have that. And I think particularly as Black professionals, we want to make sure that we can reach back and pull another brother or sister up. Because I think
Hmm.
that you have like the old guard, the Egbert Perrys, the H.J. Russells, the Moody's, those guys. And then you have kind of that mid guard, which is the Michael Tabbs and those folks. And then you have people in my generation, which is, Craig Robinson and Rod Teachy and some other folks that are kind of in that age. And then you have, the up and comers like the Greg Bowlers and the KB Ibuku and those
Absolutely.
guys. But we're all kind of in the same village, and it's all about us helping each other, us understanding where we can serve each other as resources. And then when you start looking at the next generation and the younger generation, how can we be resources and provide assistance and guidance to those folks? Is there an opportunity to give them, an opportunity or shot at something or make a connection that's going to lead to their shot that we can help to afford to the younger generation? But I think that we all need to avoid doing is just resting on their laurels and say, hey, I got mine. I don't need to worry about anybody else. I think we all have to be kind of thinking that it takes a village. We all need to have our oar in the water collectively and row in the same direction. And if your oar falls in the water, you can still use your hand. But I think everybody's here to kind of work in concert with each other to achieve the goal that we need to seek.
I noticed the word we a lot, Keith, and I love that, right? I think the absence of it has kind of been maybe not center, but a common, if not just unanimous trait in the downfall of so many societies in history. So I do hope, and I do have confidence too, right? Both from my perspective and from yours, that there is going to be more of that exchange and interaction happening between generations to kind of lift the entire tide rather than just, one boat speeding off and the next speeding off while there's a shore still full of people, right? Like that benefits everyone at the very least from just having a higher baseline in the community, the society, the country, just the neighborhood that anyone is in. So wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, and I think we kind of, particularly now with the assault on DE&I and all that stuff, I think us as a culture and as a people, I think we're gonna get back to understanding self-sufficiency, understanding how best to
Absolutely.
collaborate. And ultimately, I mean, everybody likes to overreact. I mean, I say that Americans like to politicize a ham sandwich. And so there's always an overcorrection to every situation. And this is another, I think it'll be fine at the end of the day, but there's going to be some headwinds and some trials and some tribulations. And to the extent that we can kind of utilize our own networks and resources to kind of help to achieve the goals that we seek, I think we'll be better off. I think, there's kind of an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm actually leading a real estate equity and opportunity summit at the Carter Center on the 8th of May,
Okay.
where we're trying to kind of have a conversation about that. But it's, I don't essentially care what you call it. You can kill DEI and, kill the letters, but the work still needs to happen. And I think that,
Absolutely.
we're starting to kind of understand how best to navigate certain headwinds. I mean, we've had headwinds, as a people throughout history, and we just need to figure out how best to overcome them. So, and then you had to understand kind of where your allies are,
Mm-hmm.
and and then kind of be strategic, deliberate, and intentional about kind of how you use those allies and how you use, and communicate the message in order to kind of achieve what you want to have, transpire anyway, and irrespective of what kind of headwinds and hurdles you have to overcome.
Absolutely. And before we close out, I guess, the last thought that I would think that many listening are wondering, and a question that I would like to ask is, sticking with the work, what sort of actions or just steps, right, generally speaking, on top of those that you've already lined out, but I guess maybe drilling into the work in particular, because that is where everything kind of grows out of, that is the soil. What are the steps? What sort of work? What does the work look like for Black America to be able to recapture more of what we, I guess, have lost in recent years and recent times, but also to reclaim that, was also lost a long time ago?
Well, I say that, don't get it twisted on the greatness, right? I think that
Mm-hmm.
that there's still greatness that exists, and I think it's all about, to me, really getting grounded in kind of, ourselves personally, and then our culture collectively, and understanding that it's not, we're not unilateral, we're not homogeneous. It's a
Absolutely not.
mosaic of folks, and people have different skill sets. They have
Right.
different economic strata. They have different, points of view, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all fine. I think that understanding just collectively how we can achieve a common goal together to the point of oars in the water, or the rising tide lifts all boats. I think that we need to just continue to communicate, understand where everybody is in their life, to
Mm-hmm.
understand kind of how we can help each other, and then kind of just figure out how best to make the connection and how best to utilize those resources to achieve a positive result. And I think, you know, understanding finance and understanding at the early age, understanding credit risk and all of that
Right.
is part of it. And
Right.
then, navigating through, early employment and early career with, mentorship and allyship and sponsorship, and, trying to figure out how to get in the business, but then having allies and the sponsors to keep you in the business, to kind
Right.
of make sure that as you start matriculating to the C-suite and to above, that, in the managerial strata, you're able to kind of understand and build upon kind of the mistakes and the successes that you've had in the past, and use that to carry yourself.
Excellent. Excellent, Keith. Thank you. Thank you so much for the time today. And from myself, the alumni of Georgia State and the Commercial Real Estate Group, current students, all of us, it's been a pleasure. And we are grateful to have you in the community, especially still here in Atlanta. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks for hopping on.
I was told I was going to get paid. Is there no money?
There is some Monopoly money sitting on the side of the table next to me if you want some of that, but I'll pay you
That's okay,
with
bro.
the lunch. We'll grab a coffee or
That's okay.
sometime
Yeah,
soon.
man, it was a pleasure, and certainly, love the Panthers, and love what you guys are doing, and anytime you want to call me back, just give me a shout.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward to it.